Hi, everyone. This is Lindsay from the TEFL Commute. We have a special announcement before we begin our show today, and that is that at IATEFL 2019 in Liverpool, the TEFL Commute is organizing its first event. We are hosting a board games night because Shaun, producer James, and myself are all board game enthusiasts, and we've rented an entire board game cafe. So at the end of the episode, you'll find out information on more about this event. But if you are coming to IATEFL in Liverpool, and we'll be there on Monday, April 1st, that's the opening evening of the conference, come along and join us, meet us, and play board games with us.
The TEFL Commute, Season 9, Episode 1, Sleep, in which we talk about all things sleep. Let's get started. Hello. How are you?
Oh, sorry, I just nodded off there.
And I thought it's that Brahms lullaby, isn't it? I could hear the dulcet tones over the microphone with it. How you been?
Oh, fine, good, happy to be back. It's been a long time since we've been
It's been quite a break for us, really, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, we're back again now with season 9. Hey, when we get to season 10, are we gonna do like the kind of the sexy smartphone thing and not call it season 10, but just call it season X?
Season X. Yes. Does that mean we can then you get like season XR? Do we also put the price up? Is that what happens if you get
season X, and then we get to season XXX.
Yeah, it's kind of like retina display, and we'll probably get decent microphones or something by the time we get there.
Get there. Anyway, welcome everyone. This is the TEFL Commute. It's a podcast for language teachers, which is not about language teaching, but the topic always seems to come up.
Oh, bravo! You got it right the first time out.
Yeah.
Have you been practicing?
And actually, we're starting this season with an episode with an episode that's kind of, I think, true to our origins. It isn't about language teaching, but we'll find a way that language teaching will come up, because today's episode is all about sleep and sleeping.
Yeah, it's an interesting one to start the season off, isn't it? Hi, folks. Let's talk about sleep.
How on earth is this going to relate to English language teaching? Well, we'll find a way. I think we chose this topic because both of us had read. Well, I'm reading it right now, but you said you had read this book as well.
Oh, the Matthew Walker book, Why We Sleep. Yeah.
The Matthew Walker book, Why We Sleep. I think both of us could hardly recommend this book. Let's start by just saying what we thought of that and why it kind of provoked this idea of an episode on sleep. I'm currently reading it right now. Did you like it, Shaun?
Oh, I really did. I was, but the teacher trainer in me, the moment I read it, thought, you know what, I should do this as a workshop somewhere. It's. I think, as you say, it's not necessarily about teaching, but I think a lot of the stuff in the book is really revelation, to be honest, and quite interesting, and does have implications on both teaching and learning. And I think also because there's a lot now in language teaching about kind of mindfulness and looking after ourselves and well-being, and that I think it fits in nicely into that kind of oeuvre that's going on at the moment. But
yeah. So this book, Why We Sleep, I mean, I think it's great as well. And it does link into some things. The only thing I will say about it is, do you ever feel that he kind of is overstating the case?
Yes, a little bit.
One of these books, I'm sort of like, well, sleep does everything. It's absolutely everything. Everything.
I also have to confess, when I bought the book, I think I must have bought it a couple of years ago, maybe, or whatever. I bought it at an airport. I needed a book for a long haul flight, and I started reading it and fell asleep.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. But anyway, basically, it's several arguments about like how we sleep, why we sleep, all the benefits of sleep, and the problems of being sleep deprived on your body and on society. Anyway, that's what prompted this. And so,
then, of course, we get into the language part of it, because as teachers, we start thinking about it. And once you said let's do an episode on sleep, and you start looking at sleep, there's an incredible amount of words for sleep in English.
I know. I was doing a little bit of digging around on words for sleep, imagining if I were teaching a vocabulary lesson and the topic was sleep. I mean, are there enough words there? And my gosh, there are. Listen, we've got, you can sleep, you can nap or take a nap. You can doze. You can. There's also like more informal ones. Like, tell me if these are British. I don't know. They're very North American. Catch some Z's.
For me, that's a kind of more of American one, but I think it's not. I wouldn't.
What about logging Z's? Do you log Z's?
No, I don't. I generally don't.
This one is more British. 40 winks.
40 winks. Yeah, get 40 winks.
What? You get 40 winks. Is that what it is? Because
to have 40 winks. Now I'm going to get 40 winks. I'm going to have 40 winks. But it's actually interesting. It's interesting you went face to last to catch some Z's and 40 winks, because it's not only the words, it's the idioms that go around it. Again, I mean, like catnap, night owl, sleeping giants, beauty sleep. I mean, they're not all about sleep, but the sleep, like a sleeping partner, for example, is not about sleep itself, but there's the idiom, and then you go the other way to get out of the wrong side of the bed.
Yeah.
It is a lexically rich area of it. I'm not sure I'd want to go into a lesson and teach all the words in one go, mind, but it is.
No, you might not want to, but I think it would be interesting, like some of the more idiomatic expressions, again, like 40 winks, nodding off, Z's, for example, or hit the sack. I think that would be kind of one of those.
Hit the sack, yeah. Hit the hay. Do you hit the hay?
Yeah.
I think it's it was one of those things that's like slightly revelatory in terms of, oh my word. I think one of the sites that I came across had proudly said 608 words for sleep. You're like, really?
It's kind of, we want to teach the whole thing, but it is an interesting area to look at. I mean, before we go on more on how we would teach us or in lessons and stuff like that, here's a question. This is a typical question to any teacher. Have you ever taught a class where you've seen a student fall asleep or be asleep in class?
Or fallen asleep yourself halfway through the sentence?
I don't think many teachers would have done that. With narcolepsy or whatever that is, just fall asleep in the middle of something.
I think I've had. I don't know if they've fallen asleep, but they've certainly given the impression that they might be falling asleep. Actually, no. If I think about it, it's some of the teens that I've taught of like their head down on their desk and look like they're sleeping.
I can't remember students so much falling asleep, but perhaps some of the teens when I was teaching in Mexico, I had big classes of students, like 50. But I think where I have seen it definitely, and I'm sure you can identify this as well, Shaun, is I've seen people fall asleep in conference talks that I'm giving. Not a lot, mind you, and it's quite rare, but I have seen.
Sorry, are you the ISFL plenary speaker, and you're already saying people fall asleep?
Yeah, sorry. I have ISFL plenary, and it's going to be so good, no one will fall asleep. But I have seen. Sometimes it's the room, with those like comfortable chairs, and you see someone like they just have their eyes like slightly closed. And in fact, I once challenged one person. I'm like, "Oh, I saw you sleeping." They said, "No, I was just doing that, and I was really taking it all in." I'm like, okay.
Well, you're Mr. Visualization, so maybe they were. You can't go against that. But and I must confess, I think there's that time, especially like if it's a long conference, like a full-on conference, you do sort of like by the end of it, you probably had little sleep the night before.
Yeah,
and then you're going into the conference, and conference rooms are always they're always overly warm. You sat down all day. So I can't.
Chairs that just suck the will to live out of
exactly.
you. chair at 2:30 after lunch.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you could kind of feel it taking over your body and dragging you down. So I think what was it? The participant who had their eyes closed. I think I might have been one of those during that. I get a bit paranoid about it because I am quite a bad snorer, so I do worry that if I were to fall asleep.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That would be like somebody snore breaks out from the side of the room. I'll know that that's you then.
Yeah, exactly. So so I'll be there falling asleep during your next talk with it. But that's actually, I'm just thinking about falling asleep during the class of teenagers. There is that thing. There is that lot of research about teenage brains and stuff like that, isn't it? They actually do need to fall when they need to fall asleep. They do need to fall asleep. There's quite an. I don't think we'll digress into that during the podcast, but it did just remind me now that when somebody needs to sleep, they probably do need to sleep.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Which also makes me think that these conferences, especially the bigger conferences, and again, I'm very attuned to this after reading this wretched book. Why I'm thinking, is IATEFL like a massive celebration of sleep deprivation? Because so many times you go to bed really late and you want to hit that morning plenary, so you're up really early and you're sleeping in a bed that you don't know. And
I think any long conference is like, I'm not a great sleeper anyway, and I think I never sleep well in hotels. And you do you do burn the candle at both ends to be dramatic at a long conference, and so by the end of it, I'm completely exhausted. It's just, but that's part and parcel of a conference, isn't it?
That is indeed part and parcel of a conference. Shall we take a little break right now and come back and keep talking about more sleep stuff?
Assuming people are still awake, yeah.
And we're back.
Still with us then.
Yes. Oh, I've been wide awake.
I'm so wired about sleep.
What have you brought today to our sleep topic?
What have I brought to our sleep topic? Well, I had read Matthew Walker before you, so I think there are some interesting things. Again, we're not talking about teaching, but Matthew Walker, in an article which we'll put on the website, he talks about the fact that sleep in the UK alone sleep loss costs the UK over £30 billion a year. That's amazing, isn't it? Probably even more post March, but anyway.
I was going to say that's even more. Yeah, okay.
But what I find,
is that like from traffic accidents and things like that, and
I've been unproductive, I think, with it. I haven't got the article at hand, but it was just one of the things that stood out for me. And in the same article, what I found really interesting, and I'll get your thoughts on this, is this kind of like there is this idea that sleep equates with being lazy. There's like this stigma, you're being stigmatized as lazy, and we all want to proclaim, and I think he uses like it's a badge of honor, like I only had X amount of sleep. Which
I wonder, to bring this back to like English teaching in English, I wonder if this is not like is this a very Anglo-Saxon thing? Because that's certainly the way in North America too, the sort of badge of honor of like I've hardly slept at all, whereas it's changing a bit more in Spain. But I think in other cultures, like in Spain, remember there's the culture of the siesta.
Yeah.
Not everybody, but lots of people I know are like, no, I have to have my siesta in the middle of the day. I have to, after lunch, I'm going to go lie down, have a 45-minute nap or something like that. So there isn't the exact same amount, although they do go to bed very late, but I don't get the same.
I must admit, I went out.
Living here.
That's true. Yeah.
Proclamation. So I wonder if it's an Anglo-Saxon thing. Not sure.
It's kind of related. I wonder how much related to how much you're it's proving how your worth by how much you work kind of thing with it.
Yeah, I suppose in many big companies now, regardless of if you've got that kind of culture, that corporate culture, like stay at the office late. I hardly slept at all because I was working on the project or whatever. That might permeate across borders, but it'd be interesting to think that.
I find it. I forgot about the siesta. I started teaching in Greece, as podcast listeners probably remember, and yeah, that was the first time I came across this siesta. But I kind of got into it. It's quite a nice little thing to do with it. You're in Spain, are you? Is it still common, or is it?
Yeah, well, where I'm in a small town, and yeah, lots of people still talk about their siesta, or when they close a shop closes, they talk about be open. And I know lots of people who do have the siesta, but I don't think it's the majority of Spanish. I don't.
Right.
That's not true anymore.
Okay. So would you say you're satisfied with your sleep?
Yes, I am actually. I always swore that I would never be one of these quantified self people. I would never want to measure everything, and certainly not the sleep. But I did find myself doing a bit of the measuring, and I'm getting on average, I think, around 7.5 hours.
Are you?
I'm,
Oh, wow. Gosh.
yeah.
I'm that bad. Well, one, I've got a little kid, and two, I've never slept like that. I could probably sleep like that over the evening, but I'm awake in the evening and whatever. In fact, there are the five or six questions that this is something you could do with students. If you want to talk topic of the sleep, is the identifying your sleep patterns. So the first question is, are you satisfied with your sleep?
All right.
Do you stay awake all day, or do you doze off?
Most days I stay awake all day.
Yeah, unless you're doing a podcast, then you fall asleep. Yeah. Are you asleep? For me, I vary that. It depends on actually how broken my night was. Are you asleep between 2 and 4 a.m.?
Yes, always.
Are you? I'm often 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm wide awake.
Oh, wow.
It's terrible. Do you find yourself trying to get back to sleep between 2 and 4?
No, because I am asleep.
I see. For me, I do. See, 2 and 4 is quite interesting because, of course, that's allegedly when the brain starts doing all its important work.
Yeah.
Do you spend less than 30 minutes awake at night? Are you trying to go to sleep or going back to sleep?
Less than 30 minutes, yeah.
Yeah, so when you put your head on the pillows, in like 30 minutes, you're asleep. For me, I think that's probably true by the time I go to bed. And you've already answered this. How many hours a night do you sleep?
Well, yeah, between 7 and 7.5. I can never really make it up to 8 unless I, jet lagged or something like that. But 7 usually, sometimes a bit under 7.
I'm so jealous of that thing. So I mean, those questions. I mean, they're Walker talks about them in his book, but they're a good way of. I think actually I see them as a good way of getting into the topic with students. So why is it important to go to sleep? Well, apparently it's all about spindles, Lindsay.
Oh, spindles. Okay, I think I don't know. Maybe I fell asleep in that part of the book.
Have you not got that part of the book yet? Well, we often talk about. I mean, the things that we have talked about. If we bring it kind of teachery, we've got the short-term memory and long-term memory, and moving stuff from one to the other.
Yes, I have read this. And go on though.
Yeah, well, this is what apparently spindles are these like electrical things that help do all that transferring. So if you don't sleep properly, and fall deeply asleep, then the spindles can't happen. So it actually affects your ability to remember things and transfer things across from short-term and long-term memory. So you see, now we've brought it around to teaching, haven't we? So if you think about all that vocabulary or whatever, that also what I find fascinating is that it's also the point when this is happening, this 2 to 4 in the morning. It's the point when the brain cleans itself. And I quite like that.
Read that. I love that. The idea that it's flushing out a whole bunch of stuff and kind of reorganizing itself and reorganizing the memories and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, I think it's really, really interesting. It's kind of like somebody's like flushing the loo and getting rid of all the waste during.
I know. The problem is reading that book and thinking about it. Then I was for days afterwards. I was so conscious. I was like, as I was getting tired, I'm like, oh, I'm building up all this crap in my brain. I need to purge. I need to clean. I need to Marie Kondo my brain.
That's a future episode.
So
we got
so
the spindles.
That brings us to talking about spindles and what the brain does and memory and everything like that. We're going to bring it back to language teaching and learning again, because of course there's always been this dream, pardon the pun, or this like image that one could learn a language while asleep. Now this you've heard of these kind of claims, right? Yeah, so like aside from there being like weird stories, so reports of people awaking from comas with an expertise in a language they couldn't speak. There was one of a 22-year-old Australian who spent a week in a coma and awoke fluent in Mandarin. An English footballer who woke up speaking fluent French. A Croatian girl who suddenly was able to speak German. These are some examples I found online.
Right.
And also this was being sold to people before, like we had iPhones and smartphones and Alexas and things like that. Remember, there were like you would play records or tapes to go to sleep. These were like sleep. I remember in Canada they were sold in the 80s. Like learn Spanish in your sleep, and you'd put this. You'd have to put your tape player next to your bed and put the cassette in and just play it as you go to sleep.
Tape player, cassette. Wow.
Oh,
Like, and
oh,
I was going to say it works on I guess on a Suggestipedia kind of level, isn't it? That you're because you're in a relaxed state and your brain is in a relaxed state.
it is supposed to be,
Yeah.
and it's also this. There's been lots of tests done on memory and how much you remember things. So if you study things before and then sleep on it, then your memory will be, like, you will remember them further. But I don't think that there's like any real scientific evidence that that you could learn a language purely in your sleep, or that you could learn mostly in your sleep. I really don't. I couldn't find any evidence of that.
Fair enough. Which is probably good for language teachers.
Well, it is probably good for language teachers. That reminds me, though, there was a great comedian, a joke that Stephen Wright, he said, I bought a self-learning record to learn Spanish. I turned it on and went to sleep. The record got stuck. The next day, I could only stutter in Spanish. Isn't that great?
And on that note, I think we should take a second break.
This is Bill, WimFan92. Bill's going to walk you through, and believe me, this is like, we did a rehearsal yesterday. It's going to be like top of the line sleepy stuff, because Bill's like, we're two birds of a feather. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Bill here. Hi, everybody. My name's Bill, and as Scooter kind of said, I'm here. Thank you for having me on, and I'm going to describe to you, it makes a sound, and one of them...
So what was that we were just listening to, Shaun?
Were you telling me? Sleep With Me podcast, which, wow, yeah.
Well,
I've not heard that before.
No, but this one, I found out about it. I was asking you for the benefit of our listeners.
Yeah, I know.
So that's a podcast called Sleep With Me, where it's a guy just kind of telling like long kind of rambling stories to help people who can't go to sleep. And we were talking about this at the beginning of the episode with our producer, James, who is a convert. He's like a total fan of this podcast. And we asked him, we said, does it work? And he said, oh yeah. So if you can't get to sleep,
come on, he said, did it work? But did you? What? How does he listen to it? He's got a.
Well, I was debating. Do we tell them?
Yeah, he's not listening. He's never gonna. He can always edit it out anyway, can't he?
The thought was like, what was it? A mask with earphones on it, like with whatever, like a mask, an eye mask, but with earphones as well. So you can put the mask on and listen to the Sleep With Me podcast or whatever you want to listen to go to sleep, and it just sends you right off. He said he's never heard a whole story. So there, a ringing endorsement from our producer, James.
Yeah, so, and it is, I mean, we'll obviously put the link on the page, but it's sleepwithmepodcast.com if anybody's really desperate to go and listen to it. Now, it's interesting. We'll probably get to what we do before we go to sleep in a moment. But it's interesting how many of this kind of thing there are, not necessarily that podcast, but I was, if you go to YouTube, there are so many kind of YouTube channels dedicated to like ambient music or like jungle music or thunderstorms or those kind of they're 8-hour-long playlists on YouTube, so you can get to sleep. And I was really the one I listened to recently was actually is called Calm Sleep Stories on YouTube, and it's read by Stephen Fry. You know who Stephen Fry is? Yeah. I mean, he's got a lovely voice to help you sleep anyway. But I find it interesting because obviously these stories are written, and there's an interview, I think it's in the Guardian newspaper, with the writer. Their job is actually to write something that will make people fall asleep, which is goes against kind of what you imagine an author would be, wouldn't it? You want people to be gripped by your book or your story.
And the whole purpose of this is just to make you nod off and fall.
Yeah. Exactly, but it's quite interesting. I mean, this again is the stats on. And
I guess it must be a certain kind of writing. You can't just put like word soup. It still has to make sense,
Yeah.
I listened to that Sleep With Me podcast, and it kind of makes sense. I wasn't tired when I was listening to it, so I just found it boring after a while. But it wasn't just like words randomly smashed together. It was.
Is it or is it the voice? Because I was saying I listen to Audible before I go to bed. I have random books that I listen to before I go to bed. Not books that I'm really into. So I have like a book that I listen to that I'm really into, but a book probably a slightly more light-hearted book or something that I listen to. And for me, it's the voice that helps me go to sleep. Just this kind of I like the melody of the voice.
That's true as well.
So I don't know if it's. I was asking. I'm running an online course, and I was asking some of the teachers that are doing this course with me if they had any tips, anything that they would suggest before going to bed. It's quite interesting because one of the things, as teachers, of course, one of the things they notice, which I don't think we've talked about yet, is the damage a split shift might do on a body, which is quite common in private language schools.
Yeah.
I mean, you get sleep deprived. And I remember that I worked in Greece and I used to finish, my last lesson was 12 p.m. at night, which is quite a long time. And then I moved to the Czech Republic, where our first lesson was 7:30 in the morning. Talk about trying to change your body clock around.
Yeah, we often talk about that on this podcast, the sort of the damage of those split shifts.
Yeah. So that's something we should consider.
Where essentially you're working when people aren't, because that's when they fit in their language classes.
But it's kind of.
Do you have any good sleep routines?
Sleep routines, I don't know. Let me go back to my students for a moment. So one of my students recommends, teachers who are my students. One of them says you should actually go outside early in the morning, and that will help you sleep better at night. Because I think it was Lucy who said this. Because apparently the sunlight hitting your pupils kind of helps your body clock. With it, which I thought was quite interesting. Looking at the weather today, almost
go out early in the morning.
Yeah, she says go out for 20 minutes in the morning, kind of before 9:30 in the morning, when it's a bit sunny. Don't wear sunglasses because apparently the light hitting your pupil reprograms your body clock so that you will feel sleepy in the evening. There you go.
Okay. Nice.
I think one of the obvious ones is that comes up a few times, is just avoid electronic devices, and I think that's quite.
I know, but that's...
I'm very good at that. I try not to be on my device at least an hour before I go to bed. But I still watch telly.
Yeah, I'm watching telly, so I might be watching telly on the device. Actually, that's my.
I do switch off. Try and switch off my phone and my iPad from it in that way. Another piece of advice was don't have children, which is
okay, nice.
Quite true with it. And obviously avoid heavy meals and alcohol. Were the ones that the teachers came up with. For me, my routines, I try and switch off my smart device before I go to bed. And I say if I'm, especially if I'm like on my own in a hotel or my own at home, I will listen. I like to listen to stuff before I go to bed. With it. What about you?
I think routine's probably regular bedtime when I'm at home. When I'm traveling or whatever is impossible. So that's kind of off. I do turn the phone off, but I might be not an hour before, might be less. I could never do a cup of tea or anything like that. No, that's no good.
No, I'm not one of those kind of. I don't like tea.
Any liquids before going to bed. Maybe watch an episode of a TV show, but as I'm getting older, those episodes that you watch in bed is sort of like I don't even reach the end of it.
No, it actually that works for me. I've this really good. I'm really lazy. I've got like this. I don't know how to describe it. It's kind of this thing that holds my iPad, so I don't have to hold my iPad. It just comes over my head and comes down on like a long extension. So it's right in front of me in my bed. Sometimes I do go to bed and watch my iPad like a telly like that. But I get for about 10 minutes into the episode. And I fall asleep. But this is why I think, going back to what I said before, I think it's the voice. I think its voices just make me go to sleep when I'm ready to do it. There are obviously lots of these things. These help sites to get to sleep. One that stuck out for me was get an ice bath. Get an ice bath. Yeah. Wow. I'll put the link to the website. There's some very random things on the thing, but one of them was getting an ice bath. So you sleep to a routine.
Sounds it does I find it's supposedly better to go to sleep in a room that's a little bit colder.
Well, I like cold anyway, so for me that.
But and I have to tell you, living in Spain, I cannot sleep with air conditioning, but give me a fan which rattles a bit, and I love that sound to go to sleep. That's like my cricket sound.
Really?
This kind of fan, like the. I don't know.
Oh no!
Massive sleep thing for me.
I guess it's. Again, if we want to turn it back to teaching, this is the students can compile their own list of
guide of
they can do.
like sleep tips
Yes.
or things to do.
Help Shaun and Lindsay get to sleep tips.
Exactly. Well, I think we're beginning to get towards the end of our first episode of season 9, and I, along with producer James, we had a thought of doing something absolutely wild and crazy at the end of this first episode to sort of welcome us back into it. You up for something crazy, Shaun?
I'll be careful when I say yes to this, but yes.
Okay. Regular listeners to our podcast will know that Shaun delights in inflicting upon me some of the most painfully awful jokes I've ever heard in my life. He manages to dig up these most terrible jokes according to whatever topic we're doing. So jokes about the alphabet or things like that, which would just make me groan. And as I was doing the research on this episode, I came across some of the most awful knee slapper.
Hang on a minute. What?
Jokes about sleep.
Sorry. What?
I think James and I have decided
Hang on.
that this time I have to inflict the jokes upon you. You have.
So this season we're turning things on the head, are we? So do I get to do the long, boring monologue parts?
Yeah, you get to do long, boring monologues.
Oh,
I get to tell the absolutely horrible jokes, right?
It's good that I was copied in on this. Great teamwork, guys.
All right. Are you ready, Shaun?
I guess so.
I'm gonna spring these on you, okay?
You know what's gonna happen? I'm gonna find even worse ones for the next episode.
The thing is I'm worried that you're gonna guess the answers because you're such an expert at these like Christmas cracker horrible type jokes. Anyway, ready? Okay.
Horrible. They're fabulous.
Listeners, Shaun has not seen the list of these jokes, so we're gonna spring them on him together and see if he can guess any of these. Are you ready, Shaun?
I guess so.
All right. Which pill do you give an elephant that can't sleep?
Which pill do you give an elephant that can't sleep?
On chop. Like we don't need to make the listeners wait ages.
No, go on.
A tranquilizer.
Oh dear. Hang on, that is really out of my book of jokes.
In your wheelhouse, actually. All right, here we go. What do you call a person who sleeps next to a close relative?
An cute uncle, but no, go on.
Napkin.
I like that one.
Why do you always sleep on a chandelier?
Something about light, candle, don't know.
If you're a late sleeper.
Yeah, it's on the right line. Oh, I was going there.
I think this one is going to be a giveaway because this one. All right, where do fish sleep?
On the seabed.
In a riverbed, but I'll give it to you.
Yeah. Okay.
Why does Mike Tyson sleep with a nightlight?
Yeah, wait. That's a kind of a time joke, isn't it? Something about boxing. I don't know.
Not because he's afraid of the dark, because the dark is afraid of Mike Tyson.
Oh wow! Show your age, Grandad. That's Mike Tyson tapes and cassettes in one episode.
I know. I think I hit all the things. Do I quit while I'm ahead? I think so.
I think you do. Brilliant. Right. And never do that again, Lindsay.
All right. Okay. Well, we'll see. That might be the once and only. It was painful for me too. I had to kind of, screw up my courage to do.
Well, you said you're going to have to bring yourself down to my level or something. Is that where you're going?
You gotta get down there in the mud then sometimes. Anyway, listeners, thank you very much for listening to us. This was an episode of the TEFL Commute podcast. You can find us at www.teflcommute.com. We also are on Facebook, on Twitter, and all the places, right? All the podcast places.
All the places, yeah.
Spotify, you can hear us on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, on any of those places. If you want to get in touch with us, you can send us a message on Facebook or via our webpage. We're always happy to hear from listeners, and I think that's it.
Yeah, just a reminder that if you want to take part in that or join us for the game night, go to the Temple Commute website and you'll find how and what and where that is. That should be up there for you to have a look at. So we might see some of you.
Night, and there's only 35 places that are going to be open because there's a small board game cafe, but we've rented the entire place. The whole place is ours. So for an evening of board games, fun, and laughter with us and your friends, come and find out.
And I think in the spirit of sleep, we should finish with some calming music. So goodbye, all.